Thank you very much. First, all Europeans are not named Francois. It's an accident. Maybe one correction. You said I'm the coordinator. No, I'm one of the coordinators. Climate change is way too big to be coordinated by one person. Maybe one word about me, and the last one. I was trained as a journalist. My first training is journalist, and then I became a bureaucrat. So I have some understanding, maybe remote, of what edges, what angles you will have to look for, and I will try to help you as much as possible finding relevant information, interesting angles for your work. Maybe before I start, maybe two things. Climate change is not linear, which means it doesn't have the same effects everywhere. Second, climate change is global. All this means that climate change is extremely complex. I'm really sorry, but it's going to be very complex. I tried to have a simple presentation, but you must keep that in mind. It's very, very complicated. There's a lot of interrelations, a lot of interlinkages. Also, because it is complex, the policy response is complex, because there are many different actors, different level of development. We discussed it earlier on this morning. Diversity in the countries, diversity on the continents, diversities in the society, and we got to put all this together to try to come up with something that would look like a solution. Okay, the EU has been dealing with climate change since actually the early 90s. I've put here 97 because 97 is the Kyoto Protocol, and we have developed a program which we call the European Climate Change Program in the early year of 2000, but we already had climate change measures in the 90s. I remember I used to work in the European Parliament. I was following Environment Committee, and we were discussing carbon tax in 94 already. We're not there yet. I remember also that one of the first person in Europe to talk about climate change was Mrs. Thatcher. Mrs. Thatcher, which we do not imagine would be a climate-friendly person, but she was a chemist. And that obviously made her understand that climate change was an issue. That made her sensitive to what the scientific community was saying. The measures we've taken on climate change, I'm going to take a few of them, and at the end of my presentation you have a few references, a few web links where you can find much more details. But basically, our response is about obviously cutting our emissions and finding the right instrument to do it. So I've put regulations or laws, basically. We have put standards for appliances, for building. One of my first work was to work on energy efficiency for fridges. That might seem a bit strange, but keep in mind that fridge is the only appliance that works all day long in your home. And if you can make your fridge more efficient, you really make a difference in terms of consumption and of emissions. We also have issues like, we use tools like regulations or laws and information to the consumers, the energy labeling, which is now, I think, existing pretty much everywhere. We are developing also things like market instruments, and we'll be talking about the emission trading schemes. I've heard that some people are not too keen on this here. I would be happy to discuss that. A couple of years ago, climate change started becoming a really, really hot issue. It was already hot, but it became really hot at the political level. First, of course, we had the IPCC4, and the Nobel Prize, the mobilization of people like Al Gore, but also many more. And at the EU, we had mobilization by our heads of states, which is one of the first times that really, at the top level in the EU, our president, prime ministers got together and started getting interested in climate change. So at the beginning it was a bit surprising because all their entourage, all the people working with them, did not consider environment as such an important issue. So it took a bit of time to get them understanding this. But I mean, now I think it is important to note that at the top level, at the heads of state level, there is a very strong interest on climate issues. And we see, I can talk about my boss, Barroso, is really an expert on climate change. He really understands climate issues. He's not a mathematician, he's not a physicist, but he has a good understanding of the politics of it and how to come up to a deal. I think the EU offer to reduce our emissions by 20% by 2020 and by 30% if in the framework of a global deal. I think this has been mentioned, so I guess you guys are familiar with it. If you're not, please don't hesitate. We'll discuss this. Our idea is to, and this is something we will be discussing also, is we really want to have a global deal. It's very simple. If we do all the efforts we want in the EU and nothing is done in the US, nothing is done in India or China on different ways, there are several different ways to do it, but it is important to understand that this is global. 1 ton of CO2 is 1 ton of CO2 wherever it comes from. So it's very important that we don't have holes in the system that we set up. But of course, our system must be able to deal with the fact that there are different levels of development, different financial capacity. Can you move? Okay, we adopted in December 2008, last year. We were in Poznan. I was in Poznan covering the climate conference, and at the same time we were all hung on our mobile phone to wait for the results of a big meeting at the heads of state level in Brussels, where they were finalizing what we call the climate and energy package. The energy package is, well, you read way faster than I talk, so, but basically the key measures, and these are the ones I would like to elaborate a bit on. We're expanding our carbon market. We are boosting the use of renewable energy. We are developing renewable fuels in terms of transport fuels. So that's biofuels, but not only biofuels. We are improving energy efficiency. We're working on what we call CCS, which is capture and storage, carbon capture and storage. And we have specifically a specific directive on reducing emission by cars. Now we're going to start getting into the tricky things. Okay, carbon markets. I don't know if you are familiar with carbon markets. Yes? Good. Right. I'm happy because I didn't want to get into explaining what the carbon markets are. So basically what you can see here is that we've developed a market in 2005. It is true that our market was criticized at the beginning. We have the feeling we're quite confident that the market is operating relatively well for them now. It is the first market at a continental level, and we are really hoping that a lot can be done by using this type of market instruments in order to, at the same time, reduce emissions, but also leverage finance, which could be used in the negotiation. I've heard comments early on about the market, the first ETS not being hard enough on companies, about the ETS being too easy, about member states over-evaluating the need for emission permits. I can understand all this, but we have to understand that also it was about setting up a system. This is why we had a revision of this system in order to tighten up everything. From a policy point of view, and which is my job now, not so much to analyze and investigate, but analyze, investigate, and propose solutions. You have to keep in mind that you have to find a solution that is workable, which means that people can agree with. And it is very nice to propose a perfect system. If nobody agrees with him, from a policy point of view, it's a complete mistake. We have a lot of proposals, lots of laws like that, which are on the paper very good, but got rejected right away. So, of course, our work, and I understand that from a journalist point of view or from an NGO point of view, it can be a bit frustrating because you see this is not perfect, because you see there are loopholes. Yes, there may be loopholes. This is why we're trying to close them. This is what we've been trying when we expanded the ETS. And this is what we will be trying to do when we develop our policies and try to complete our policy portfolio. Carbon market, maybe one thing in the discussion. In our negotiations in Copenhagen, that's going to be one of our proposals in Copenhagen. We would like carbon markets to be developed worldwide, first starting at OECD levels or richer country levels, and then expanding, especially with the most advanced economies. We don't want these economies to go full covering all the sectors. We understand that there are diversities, and in some cases we would like simply to get the most advanced and most polluting sectors in the market. Second objective, and I would just like to highlight these two, is the renewable energy. I think